Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
I mean, I got caught out. I would literally be in bed and, we've got busy kids, we've got busy lives, we're going from here to there. And I get this kind of, precious 15, 20 minutes sometimes at the end of the day just to talk to my wife at the end of the day. And here I am scrolling email and she's scrolling social media.
We can often find ourselves in a tug of war caught between the demands of work and those of the family. When this becomes out of balance, it can have a significant implication to our own health and our home life. Our guest today is Daniel C. He's an author, a former pastor, a TEDx speaker, and the CEO of a productivity consulting group called Spacemakers. He's also an author of a book called Spacemakers, How to Unplug, Unwind and Think Clearly in the Digital Age. He'll share some of his own burnout story and how he managed to change his practices and rhythms in his life to think, rest and slow down and connect with God. That's Daniel C. along with my wife Kate, and I'm Brett Ryan for Focus on the Family, Australia. Well, welcome once again to Focus on the Family.
Great to be here again. Thanks for having me.
So why do we need to find more space?
Look, why don't we need more space?
I was going to say that's a very big question.
I work with busy leaders. I work with organizations. I just spend a lot of time with people who have busy roles. And what I'm hearing again and again is just life is busy and distracted and cluttered and there's more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't telling me they need more information. They don't tell me they need more opportunity. They literally say they need space to think deeply, to plan, to be intentional in how they live, to connect with people that they love and just be present.
Mm-hmm.
Space to breathe, space to, reflect on the inner life, and obviously for us to pray and to listen to God and to allow Him to shape us from the inside out. There is just no space in our world. And people need it and they don't know how to get it.
And you've always had this. You've always had space. Is that correct?
Yeah. I just walk around on a cloud, wondering what on earth could I do with my hours of free time.
I mentioned now in the introduction that you've had your own burnout story. So take us back there and what was happening in your life at that time.
Yeah. So look, I'm clearly a busy individual. I'm type A and I like getting stuff done. I'm very task oriented and I love what I do from a work perspective and I love the opportunities that are in my life. But, it was in my early 30s. I had one child. I was building a house. I think I was a physiotherapy manager at the time. I was volunteering heavily in my church, leading a lot of things. And I just got to the stage where I didn't sleep very well. And then the big thing that started to impact me is I started to get breathing difficulties, meaning that I started to feel breathless talking to my staff. And then I started to feel breathless at the dinner table, just sitting with my family. And eventually I felt breathless reading books to my kids, board books at night. And I was quite concerned. So I went to a doctor and, did lung function tests and heart tests. And basically I'm a healthy person, which is great. I'm very thankful for that. But the doctor heard about my lifestyle and he just said, this is anxiety. I think this is stress-related anxiety and your body is telling you to slow down.
Now, as a man, how did you respond to that?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is I didn't feel anxious, not the way I think anxious people are.
Yeah.
But it was anxiety and, it did worry me because I had another close friend who actually did burnout and he had breathing problems as well, ended up going to hospital and ended up quitting his job and could never lead at a high capacity again. So I saw that and I thought, this is actually where I'm heading if there isn't a dramatic shift in the way in which I live and work. And so I did take time off of work to get some basic health back. And then I got a coach and I suppose I started to really reflect and think about, what does it look like to work from a place of rest rather than just work and burn out?
Yeah.
What does it look like to have space and to pray and to be present and to be before I do, to have a way of living where my inner life guides my outer life rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
Actually, could I tell a story on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a story I read, I think it was in John Mark Comer's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I might be wrong, but about an explorer, and he was in the Amazon with the indigenous community that were guiding him on his trek, and he was pushing them to go harder and harder and get through the Amazon rainforests. And then all of a sudden, they all sat down and they refused to walk. And he cajoled them and he yelled at them and tried to get them moving again. And he said, "Why won't you move?" And eventually, through an interpreter, one of them said, "Well, we've been walking and traveling for 3 or 4 days straight, and it's time for our souls to catch up." And I really spoke to me, because I felt like I was a pancake, wide and thin, like I'd just been doing more and more, and I was productive and getting stuff done, but it was almost like my inner life was dry and shriveling and my outer life was looking great.
Yeah.
And I felt God saying to me, slow down and make space so that the rich inner life can guide who you are.
You can be refreshed.
Yeah.
If you keep pacing, it is withering. If you're not connected, I guess, from a faith-based angle, is if we're not constantly connecting to the vine.
Yeah, John 15.
Yeah.
I'm the vine, you're the branches, and if you don't abide in me
That's
or
right.
remain in me, well, then I can't remain in you. And so there's this, and there's
you
a
wither and
pruning,
die.
and there's a pruning.
Yeah.
If you bear fruit, I will prune you. If you don't bear fruit, I will prune you. He
Yeah.
says. So there's this sense where that was a pruning for me, that God was pruning off idols and false ways of seeing the world and identities where I would find my worth in what I did. And he was teaching me that true productivity, I'll use that term because I'm a productivity consultant, but it comes out of an abiding or remaining in God and a hearing and listening to him. Because there is work. We need to work for 6 days and rest for one.
Yeah.
I'm talking about it from the creation story.
Yes.
That there is value in work and producing and doing things that are important, but it needs to come out of a place of Sabbath and rest and abiding.
And not out of approval.
Not out of approval and fear
Yes.
or, achievement.
Yeah.
And so that was part of that lesson. And obviously I had to put into place practical steps to change the way in which I
So
lived.
with this aha moment of changing your own personal rhythms, what happened next?
So I started to actually put in practice some space before work. And so I ended up looking at it from a rhythmical perspective. So annual rhythms of rest, weekly and daily. So annually, I would, for example, I started to book a day a quarter where I'd walk on the beach and write in my diary and just think about my life and have a sense of where I am and where I'm going and what I'm doing. And so I've done that for a decade now, and that's been a really solidifying place where I have some days of space. I would book my holidays before I book my rest. So in January, my wife and I book all of our annual leave in advance, and we've got a bit of a structure for how and why we rest. And so we put in space for rest before we fill in consulting and clients and speaking engagements, so that our annual perspective starts with rest and space, and then we build activity around that. Does that make sense?
The important rocks in your life.
Big rocks.
Just to, and you don't have to go into great detail, but did your wife find the new improved Daniel 2.0? How did that help in your relationship and the family life?
Well, look, I'm going to answer the way I think my wife would say it, and she'd probably say he still wrestles with this. I still wrestle with space. There's no magic before and after, like those wonderful photos where people are unfit and then they're suddenly magically fit. Because I love getting stuff done.
We're all work in progress.
I run a business. I have a YouTube channel. I have a podcast. I love transforming and helping people's lives. So, there's a sense where there's this great kingdom calling on me and I like to do stuff, but I also realize that if I get breathless or if I'm not sleeping or hopefully catching it before that, if I start to be irritable or just simply run from the outside in, well, then I think I've learned to catch that a lot earlier. Yeah. I would get breathless every few years for a few days, that's what I mean. So, so
you can feel it resurfacing.
There's this gift that it's like, okay, I have to remember this lesson and go back to the vine and look at my practices and think about what I have to say no to. So I'm not pretending that I have it all together, but I'm definitely not a workaholic, and I've definitely done things differently as a result. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I want to be honest and real about how life is.
That's fair enough. Well, moving forward, now you've made this as your profession, your professional thing. Your own experiences have helped you help others using your own tragic story of wake-up call that you needed. Well-being is the buzzword. We want that well-being. And technology is part of that. How do we get off our devices? So we've spoken in another previous program about kids and technology. So how are we as adults going to do better well-being for ourselves and for our families?
So I do talk about well-being, but I really spend a lot of my time teaching digital well-being because I have come to the conclusion that we can't have a mature conversation about wellness in our culture unless we talk about digital wellness, because a lot of our mental health struggles, a lot of our relational issues, and a lot of our burnout issues are actually related to how we engage with technology and our philosophies and beliefs around technology. So I'm not saying technology is bad, not in any way, but I'm saying we need a mature understanding of how our habits around technology are impacting our well-being, because if we don't do that, I don't think we'll actually be able to address the root of some of the problems.
Yeah, fair enough. That's good.
So in my TED Talk, I talk about, and I start my book with this, Spacemaker, I talk about the upside down U curve. So what I did is I started to look at the research and mapped out the difference between, so what is the relationship between productivity and technology? Because that's the field I work in. Because clearly you need to use technology to be productive, but there's something about using technology in a tremendously high volume that seems to reduce productivity from what I see in the leaders I coach. And so what I discovered is it's not a linear relationship. It's certainly not more technology equals more productivity.
Yep.
And it's not even like a curve that goes up where technology makes you more productive and then it plateaus, because that only demonstrates the idea that more technology doesn't give you endless gains. And Zoom fatigue shows that there's something more going on, right? So it's actually an upside down curve where you need some technology skills and practices on the left-hand side of the curve to be highly productive. You imagine a curve that's going up. More technology is more productivity. Then you end up with a plateau. It's kind of like the productive middle where technology's given you gains, but it's not creating a negative effect on your life.
Yeah.
But then what's happened to our culture and to many of us is we've slidden down the right-hand side of the curve where too much technology use is impacting our relationships, our spiritual life, and our ability to think deeply and clearly and to rest fully. And so the practices I learned all the way back in my 30s where I nearly burnt out, actually, they're the practices I've realized of unplugging and unwinding to return from that right side back to the middle. So to be a healthy, whole person nowadays, to have what I call digital well-being, we need to be great at using technology, get your inbox to zero, know how to use to-do lists, know how to use the technologies well on the left side. But on the right-hand side, we need to be really good at learning to have rhythms in our life where we are disconnecting for relationships, where we are having Sabbaths, where we're turning off our phone at night, where we're filling our life with non-digital experiences that actually make us feel whole and rested so that the technology works.
You just downloaded a lot of stuff, and why don't we talk about that more after this break for our listeners? We're speaking with Daniel C., our guest today for Focus on the Family, Australia.
The Word for Today is Australia's most widely read daily devotional, designed to give you practical teaching to keep you focused on your relationship with Jesus. Read it online or subscribe to the free printed edition at thewordfortoday.com.au.
Welcome back to Focus on the Family Australia. We're speaking with Daniel C. He's the author of Spacemaker, How to Unplug, Unwind and Think Clearly in the Digital Age. Well, just before the break, you just downloaded a whole lot of different things that we could do, so we're just going to slow it down and just be able to help our listeners to, who are really listening to this and saying, I need a little bit of that, because my pace is just becoming uncontrollable. Instead of saying the word busy, we can say, well, life is full, and there's no problem with that. But for those who it is affecting their health mentally and physically, what should they be doing to slow down?
Yeah, it's interesting. So look, I suppose to answer your question, to summarize the more complex diagram that I described, I would say that you need two sets of habits to be healthier and happier and more productive in the digital age. You need habits of keeping pace, so using technology to keep up, and the habits of making space. So deliberately and intentionally unplugging and disconnecting to fill your life with other things. And if you have those rhythms in practice, keeping pace and making space, you generally will find your way to some type of healthy balance. Yep.
So how do we do that?
Yeah, well, you have to work on habits on both sides of the spectrum. So look, in my day job, I teach people habits of keeping pace. So I have a course called Email Ninja, how to get your inbox to zero.
I need that course.
Can you it'd be an intense course, really. Inboxes of 10,000, and I'm saying you can't have that.
I was so
10,000 is
proud.
easy. 10,000 is no problems
I
whatsoever.
was so proud this morning. I deleted 300 emails just because.
Because she was challenged because I said, he's going to talk about this.
that and they said you're running out of Gmail space.
That is hilarious. So and look, the reason I care about that is because a lot of people feel stress and anxiety. They feel like their life is full because their inbox is full and they don't have a strategy to deal with it.
Brett feels stressed about my emails. I don't feel stressed about them.
Well, that's a new one for me. But so that's an example. Does that make sense? So if you can learn some skills and strategies to manage email, or if you can learn strategies to clear your mind and run it on a to-do list, or if you can learn strategies basically to organize yourself better using technology, so that's the keeping pace side, well, then you'll actually feel more in control and you'll have more ability to focus on the things that matter. So that's, I mean, obviously I can't teach you in an interview like this how to do it, but that conceptually is there are people who need more skills in how to use tech so that they can make space by using tech well. Then on the other hand, there's very practical things that you can do to unplug and unwind. So I've already talked about some of the annual rhythms and patterns, like booking my holidays first and booking times to think. But I would say the digital Sabbath, or what I would just say is a Sabbath, a weekly day of rest, is actually superbly important. It's obviously biblical, and it's what I call a spacemaker rhythm, because essentially you are making an intentional decision to say that one day out of the 7 is not going to be the same as the rest. It won't be filled with worry and want and digital distraction and emails and texts and online news, but you're going to intentionally shape your time so that you're giving glory to God, so you're remembering, and so that you're resting. They're the two pillars, I would say, remembrance and rest. And then obviously structuring time so that that day can be renewing, and that allows you to enter each week with a bit more energy. And obviously we don't just do this for our productivity because it's biblical, but there is a real payoff in terms of just living a healthy whole life.
I was going to say, it's biblical. He tells us to rest. He created us, so he knows how we work. And for us to do it well, we have to rest.
Look, I think Christians have something to offer into our intensely hyperactive, busy world, but we don't Sabbath. A lot of us, like, I don't see a mature expression of resting in the Christian church where this is something we can teach because it's foundational in the creation story in the Old Testament, like 10 Commandments, in how Jesus acted and lived, how he lived his life. So I think there's something we could offer the world if we recapture it for ourselves. I mean, I won't go too much into that, but I think that it's important to be able to learn to rest. And then from a daily perspective, there are some simple things I would recommend people do. For example, to charge their phone outside of their bedroom and to not start and end each day with a phone in bed. I think
that's very simple,
it's
doable.
It's doable. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I must admit, I got caught out. I would literally be in bed and, we've got busy kids, we've got busy lives, we're going from here to there. And I get this kind of, I don't know, precious 15, 20 minutes sometimes at the end of the day just to talk to my wife at the end of the day. And here I am scrolling email and she's scrolling social media. And, we're having a relationship with Siri rather than each other and the things that married couples can do together. So, so I'm like, this is dumb. Like, why am I... Like St. Ignatius basically has rhythms where we start and end the day with prayer and meditation and God. I mean, Christians have always started the day by reading the scriptures and praying and reflecting on who they are in Christ and allowing that to shape their day. But now I'm habitually reaching for my phone and allowing my day to be shaped by what's happening in the Ukraine and terrible news or work or worry. And so to break that habit can be tremendous. And I call that the daily pause, just to start and end the day with some space. And then you can get into your technology. So some simple habits like that can make a tremendous difference to get you back to that productive middle.
Yeah.
Well, you've written a blog post about the wisdom of zooming in and out to reflect on the meaning of your life. Can you explain that?
Yes, that's a different idea again, but it was, I think it's a really important one. That was based on research from people who were asking younger and older people, if you had, I think, half an hour to hang out with someone, would you prefer to spend some time with someone you knew? Would you prefer to spend time with like a celebrity that you've met, they said a famous author? I don't know why they chose that, but or would you prefer to hang out with someone you've just met and had a really great connection with? And older people almost also, they would prefer to hang out with people they had good relationships with, so they knew, old friends. Younger people said that they would prefer to meet a celebrity or to meet and spend time with someone new. But then when the researchers did a follow-up study, they added a question. They said to young people, if you were to move overseas for the next 3 years and you only had half an hour left, who would you spend time with? And they almost all said they would spend time with loved ones like the older people did. And if they said to the older people, if you could guarantee 20 years of great health, who would you spend time with? And they would then spend time with celebrities and new people. And so what that demonstrates is the amount of time we think we have left will shape our priorities and our decisions in life. And as a result of that, it's helpful then to zoom in and out, meaning if you're a young person, it's helpful to think about what might it look like when I'm 80 and how would I like my life to look? What might it look like if I had 2 days to live and how would I shape my time?
Yeah.
What would it look like if I had 5 years to live and I still had to save for my mortgage, but I'm running out of time? And if you can have the ability to think about your life through different perspectives, to zoom out and then zoom in, it gives you the ability to make wise choices about how you use every moment.
Yeah,
that's what the blog post was about.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Excellent. We've only got a few more moments left, and this has been fascinating, and it's also been very worthwhile for many people who are going through their own levels of burnout, and that can be, described in various ways. There's an idea in something that you've written, and it was talking about the medium is the message. What does that mean, and how do we apply that to our everyday life, and especially our faith life?
The foundation of my book really was that we need to really examine our paradigm or belief system around technology if we are to shift our practices. That it's easy to say, charge your phone outside your bedroom, but most of us can't do it. And it's not that we don't have a strategy for getting an alarm clock. It's just that we have a set of beliefs and assumptions around freedom, around choice, around technology, around a whole lot of things that fundamentally make it hard to disconnect from our phones. And so the whole book is on this premise that we need to think about our beliefs and our understanding of technology, what it means to us, and how it shapes our loves and our longings, our imagination about the good life, and then work out what are the principles we might live on, and then the practices follow that. Does that make sense? So one follows the other. So to answer your question about the medium is the message, that was one aspect of my unraveling of the paradigm that we have. And that's the idea that the technologies we use are embedded with ideas. And those ideas shape us, whether we think they're shaping us or not.
Yeah.
And therefore, we need to understand the ideas that are embedded in the technology we use, because a lot of the time, if we look at it from a faith perspective, they are not based on faith orientation. The ideas embedded in some of the tools we use are not designed to help us love God. They're designed to make us distracted and spend more time online. So therefore, we have to be really thoughtful about the ideas in a technology, not just the content of the technology. But that was one of several broad ideas that help us get to the point where we recognize actually there is probably an attachment that I have to technology, and there's probably
So we justify ourselves.
cultural dreams, visions, imagination. There's a whole lot of psychological, spiritual stuff around how we engage tech.
Yeah.
If we don't confront that as individuals, as a society, then we'll find ourselves habitually distracted and burnt out.
Final question. If someone's listening to this right now and they're going, I need to know where to start, and I feel like my work-life balance is way out of kilter, what would you like to share with them?
Look, I'd probably start by just carving out a little bit of space. And that might be going outdoors and spending 5 minutes without your phone, without a device, without a smartwatch, and just breathing and, praying if you're a praying person, or at least looking out around you and observing nature, and just give yourself an experience of a bit of space, and then start to think about how might I get a bit more of this in my life, knowing that a little bit of space can make a big difference. Now, of course, you need to think about how you might shape your tech differently, and you need to think about how you might shape your habits, but I think it starts with a bit of space to think and breathe and be, and then to make choices about what is the next small step from there.
It's so good.
I do have a podcast, The Spacemakers, and our first season is about one topic and one topic only, which is about how do you retrain your attention to have space. And we interview a whole lot of amazing people like Jack Rewalt, who talks about space on the footy field, from Dr. Vidal, who talks about how to untrain tinnitus, unlearn to hear. But the most of the season is really about us giving you very practical activities like the one I just gave you, week by week, and then feeding back on those activities until you learn to make space in your life. So if you're interested in actually taking this seriously and reframing your attention, I'd love you to look at the Spacemakers and follow us on that journey of learning to retrain your mind and your heart to have some space.
That's so good. Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for coming in today and sharing your story.
No worries. Thanks for having me again.
Our guest today has been Daniel C. He's a former pastor, author, TED speaker, and the CEO of a productivity consulting group called Spacemaker. To find out more and to gain access to some online courses, go to spacemakers.au. Focus on the Family is committed to help strengthen families and relationships. It's a real privilege to help those in need, provide free counselling, resources, and to pray with them. And this service is only made possible with the financial and prayer support of people like you. Please consider partnering with us so that we can continue to help more families thrive in Christ. On behalf of Kate and the rest of the Focus team, I'm Brett Ryan, inviting you to tune in for another edition of Focus on the Family, Australia.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.